The first hypothesis that could explain the origin of obesity in humans is the so-called Thrifty hypothesis, and this hypothesis suggests that obesity, mostly in developed countries, is a throwback to our ancestors or prior humans having undergone the process of positive selection. This positive selection basically means that there is a tendency of beneficial traits to increase in prevalence. These so-called thrifty genes favored energy storage and were seen as a fitness advantage. They basically changed the energy balance and put more weight on the energy storing side rather than the energy spending side. So why would this be beneficial? It is currently believed that having these so-called thrifty genes prepared humans for periods in which there was food shortage or even major famines. By having the ability to store energy better for longer periods of time, it would be beneficial to become obese rather than skinny. So there is quite some evidence for this hypothesis, and it is mostly seen in animals. Think about squirrels, for example, who in preparation for a long hibernation period eat a lot of food and basically become fat. In that case, it would be beneficial to be able to store energy better rather than being skinny. Another example is that of certain bird species that prior to a large migration also become fat and store energy in order to take on this major journey. So the thrifty hypothesis at first does seem quite logical. However, there are two main points of critique. The first point is that if these thrifty genes are so advantageous, why does not everyone have them? By now you would expect that these genes would have passed on to everyone and that everyone in modern society would be obese. Now we know that this is clearly not the case. Even in countries with high obesity rates, such as the United States, there's a large number of people and individuals, and it's around 20%, that are still very lean. Thus, it would not make sense why there are still so many lean people if these so-called thrifty genes are so favorable. The second point of critique is more related to the animal part. In animals, prior to a time of migration or hibernation, the entire population would become obese. And this is clearly done because you increase the chances of surviving if you would be obese as a squirrel or a bird. If you were not to be obese or not to be able to store fat, you have a big chance of not surviving these periods, making selection very intense. If we assume that the same selective pressures exist for humans, we would expect everyone in humanity to become obese by now. However, as we said, this is not the case. So as we can see, the thrifty hypothesis does seem very plausible at first. There are still some major points of critique regarding this hypothesis.